Welcome to Business Mentorship, Keeping It Real. My name's Trish Tonai, founder and host for the series, where we feature entrepreneurs and enterprise leaders who share their great ideas on our marketing platform, shareyourstories.online. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Ingrid Herbert, who's a happiness health speaker, coach, and author, who's going to share with us a few tips on overcoming anxiety. Ingrid joins us today from Toronto, Ontario. Welcome.
Hey, Trish. Yes, nice being here. Happy to be here.
I have to say, Ingrid, that your topic could not be more important given all of the sort of high state of stress and anxiety that we all seem to be dealing with at this point in time. So I'm going to ask you to share with us something that we can all do to try to overcome anxiety. How do we sort of bring the temperature of the room down?
Well, to me, the really quick fix I share with clients, it's the fact that our bodies are a stress relief tool.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the fact that we are able to have access to serotonin, dopamine, our endorphins. So a really easy way to get there, to get out of the fight or flight, because usually we're the anxiety that we're feeling is something that feels uncomfortable. We're overwhelmed. Right. We are flustered with our thoughts and our emotions. So a quick way to do that is I say, okay, we have our palms and we press the palms together real easy, but we actually have to then activate it. There has to be enough pressure that we're activating the reflex points. And once that happens, it triggers in the body the release of the happy hormones, the release of the serotonin and the endorphins. So I call it happy hormones because the body starts to have this sensation, that something good is happening, even if nothing's changed, right? Oh. Even if nothing has changed. So that's a quick one that I say, okay, the body is available to us all the time. So you can't use an excuse. I couldn't get to my stress ball. I couldn't get to my, to the yoga class. You have it right. You have it available with you all the time. And so the second one, I'll just share two. The second one is to think of the deep belly breathing. And deep belly breathing also gives the body an opportunity to get out of its fight or flight survival mode. And I think in terms of going all the way to the feet, the thinking of it is going all the way to the feet. Because when you're caught in that tightness and that tension, you're not necessarily thinking, oh, my belly, I should breathe in. So if you just at least think of your feet and you think of breathing, at least it's going to trigger the memory of, okay, I should breathe. I should at least inhale and exhale, because when we're in the panic and the anxiety, we tend to hold our breath. We tend to get the shoulders go up. We tend to tense the body, right? So at least if we breathe, we can have the body responding without having to think of calming myself down. You don't have to think, oh, I should be relaxed now. It's not so easy to access when you're
it's too much to think about, right?
Too many things to think about. Yeah. Too many things to think about. So now, yes.
Now, I know that you're also a Reiki master and a yoga instructor. And what happens lots of times with folks in your area of expertise is that you're sort of rounding out and you're bringing in all of the other sort of areas of expertise into one sort of platform. So I must admit, the breathing is something that you probably have to tell your clients to do when you're doing Reiki. And it's certainly a constant reminder when you're in yoga too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like to say it. I was giving a talk 2 days ago, and I was giving the example of an elite athlete. And with an elite athlete, they practice every day. They practice as if they're still trying to be discovered, right? So the practice of happiness is when we are feeling good. And we need to do that outside of the moments of the anxiety, the overcoming, the issue, the meeting that you need to go to, the presentation that you're giving, and that all of the nerves, we have to practice it outside of that.
Mhm.
So even though I'll say to clients, do the breathing, I want them to also practice it as if they are just learning how to do it. Like
Mhm.
have it be something that every couple of seconds or a couple of minutes throughout the day, just breathe. Just make sure that you're releasing the happy hormones, make sure that the body is doing some activity that focuses on practicing feeling good, right?
So tell me, you just mentioned that you did a talk, you were doing a speaking engagement. I'm going to assume that you were doing it virtual because we
Yes.
still seem to be in this sort of hybrid situation. So as a professional speaker, tell us a little bit about, I'm sure the viewing and listening audience are curious because, how do you engage with the audience when we're doing it through sort of this flat screen where you can or cannot see people's faces to get their sort of engagement? Because, I think as a speaker, you look for the smile, you look for the nodding of the head, those kinds
Yes.
of physical signs that give you an idea that you're connecting with your audience. So tell us a little
Yes.
bit about how now as a professional speaker, when you're doing it virtually, do you make that connection with the audience?
Well, there's a tool that I teach called happy body language. So the connection, first and foremost, it's us, the person, we're presenting.
Yeah.
And so the main thing, the happy body language for the audience as they're listening is the fact that we open the chest area. So there's that vulnerability, there's that acceptance. The shoulders are rolled back and down. That's from the yoga.
Mm-hmm.
But also the personal power right here in the solar plexus. And so the mirroring, I would say, mirroring how you portray yourself to then have hopefully an extension where it feels much more personable as opposed to being like this or
Right.
even turned away or right. So the first thing is the happy body language, but it's also our nonverbal body language. And
Mhm.
that is much more powerful, whether it's through virtual, whether it's on the phone, whether it's even if it's in person. The first thing for us to think about is what is the feeling of the nonverbal message that we're sending out into the world, right? Into the universe. Like everyone hears that first before they hear us speak, right?
That's
So,
so true because, when you're doing sales coaching, and I'm sure like you, we've had a life prior to being an entrepreneur and we've all taken these courses on how to be the best that we can be. And one of the
yes.
things that I always resonated with me was when they were saying, when you're doing sales calls over the phone, you really do have to smile because people can hear, it sounds crazy, but they can hear you smile, right? And so
Yeah.
to your point about the happy body language, that's a really wonderful phrase because I think that we forget, to your point, sometimes when we're even participating in these calls, we're slumped in the chair and we're not really, because, we're tired or we're thinking about what our to-do list after we get off the call. And I think we forget that the people who are presenting to us, we're sending a message to them as well.
Yes, yes, yes. And we get caught in our multitasking. It's like, I can
Right.
listen to that, but I'm going to think about what's my grocery
Yeah.
list. And as
Yeah.
soon as you start doing something a little bit, as soon as your thought, I would say, goes somewhere else, the body language, if you're not conscious of it, starts to change, right?
Right.
So you start to
Mhm.
actually feel that the person has left the room, even though you see the head.
Right. Even though you're physically there.
Yes.
That's so true.
Yes.
That is
So
really
yeah,
so
yeah.
true. So tell us a little
Yes.
bit about, I mean, this is a really wonderful area of expertise for you. When I was reading your bio on the Share Your Stories website feature, and it was talking about happiness and wellness and the fact that you're a coach. And I know that we've all had, nobody's journey goes without bumps in the road. And so you shared a little bit with us in your story about how, you're a single mom and you've had lots of responsibility and you needed to change. We need to change ourselves before we're actually going to make a difference in the world. So tell us a little bit about how you became a happiness coach, because I can't think of anything more amazing than wanting to work with a happiness coach. Who doesn't need more happy in their life?
I know. I stumbled into it. I came from a place of really believing in health and in wellness, in the sense that you know, quick backstory or the behind the scenes story. My grandmother, at a really young age, at told me that I had this gift of healing. And that kind of opened my awareness to, going beyond just the physical. And so that she introduced a lot of herbs and trees and spirits and all sorts of, so it made my world very, very large and wide from a young age. I'm saying like 8 or 9 years old. And but somewhere along the journey, I would say going through my teens, my 20s, my expectations, I realize it now, the self-sabotage, but it's because of my happiness was connected to the outcomes, right? And we learn this. This is behavior that we learn. If someone's happy, if someone, validates to tell us that we're doing really well, we feel good. If they tell us, well, you have the review your job or relationship, and they're like, you're not very good at this. You're not. So we start to internalize that. We start to think that our happiness is connected to our results, to our outcomes. And it took me a while before I realized that just because I'm failing at something, meaning my standard of it didn't work out, doesn't mean that I don't deserve to still be happy. And that's one of the biggest message I've been sharing in my peace, love, and happiness group. I'm like, you still deserve to be happy, even if you're struggling to get out of bed, even if you're struggling to get to work that day, or even if you're struggling with the relationship and you're struggling with your teenager and you do not need to sacrifice your value and worth of happiness. So that was my big aha
Aha
light bulb.
moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So yeah,
You know,
yeah. So now I'm like, yes. Oh,
that's
sorry.
a really powerful statement because I think we forget that we have a choice, right? We get so bogged down in the feeling of failure that we forget that it's really a lesson learned, right? Like, because
Exactly.
we make mistakes all the time. I mean, I don't venture to guess that if we actually had to sit down and write down the things that we found challenging in the day, there may be lots of silly things like, you spilled the sugar on the counter today when you were making your coffee. And, that's not a really great way to start the day. So then you end up spiraling into this feeling or this vortex of negativity, right? And I think,
Exactly.
to your point, to be able to look at a challenge with maybe taking a little spin and turning it into something that making light of it, so that you
Yes.
don't end up, starting a day with something negative that happens and then the entire day is just a write-off.
Yeah. And a lot of times we think that's okay. We think that it's okay to take our valuable time and just trash it. I say, oh,
Right.
just forget about the day. I'll do it tomorrow. And so that was part of my own motivation, because I was also saying, when I do this really well, because I was caught in a little bit of perfectionism.
Right.
When I do this really well, then I'm going to reward myself
Right.
with something that's going to make me feel happy. And I started realizing my son is growing up. I'm getting older. Okay, something needs to change. Something
Right.
needs to change, right?
Right.
So
Well, that's a really wonderful statement. Now, you mentioned that your grandmother told you that you had a gift.
yes,
So we all have had people in our lives who have given us some positive reinforcement, and sometimes we call them mentors and sometimes not. So would you say that your grandmother was at a particular stage and age in your life one of your mentors?
absolutely, absolutely, yes, yes, yeah. Before I even realized what she was teaching me and became very conscious of the lessons that she was teaching me, yes, absolutely, very, very influential in that way. Yeah.
I think we sometimes forget that the people that come into our lives and the family members that, nurture us along the way, that they actually probably see some things in us that we don't see in ourselves, right?
Yeah, and thankfully.
Yeah,
Thankfully, and I know
they care.
sometimes, yeah.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
can
for
it can
sure.
it can go it can go against us, and it can be
go
for us.
with us.
So
Yeah.
thankfully, that was a very supportive insight that she gave. And I did not believe it for years, I have to say. She kept saying it and I just said, mm-hmm, okay.
She turned you into a believer. Well, I'm going to tell
Exactly.
you that this little thing that you mentioned about squeezing your hands together
Yes.
to release the sort of happiness hormones, that's something that I'm going to use often because, even if it's a little thing in life that you're feeling a little anxious about, it doesn't have to be a full-blown meltdown. It could be something, really simple. And I think
Exactly.
that's a really powerful tool because everybody has two hands. And we can
Yes.
use those two hands for positive reinforcement, right?
Exactly. That was my thinking. I was thinking, what are some easy, simple
Simple.
ways that
Yes.
we don't have to go looking for things.
Right.
What's already within us, and I like ease and convenience, so I'm always promoting that the easy way to do it. There's an easy
Yes,
way
for
to do it.
sure. For sure. Now, one
Yeah.
of the things that we do in our guest blog is we ask folks to share 3 words of advice. And your 3 words of advice are just get happy. So tell
Yes.
us why you feel that that's so important for our viewing and listening audience.
It's so important because it's a little bit of what we had said earlier. It's the fact that we spill a little bit of sugar, we spill some milk, and we just give up on the day. We give up on ourselves, and I think that little reminder as a mantra to, you're stuck in traffic and you're about to go into a bit of irritation and frustration. Just get happy saves your moment. It salvages the moment, it salvages your day, possibly sometimes the week. It has the opportunity to just salvage and make sure that you remember, you know what, you deserve to be happy regardless of what's happening, right?
Well, I think that's a really wonderful way for us to end our conversation today. And I really want to thank you for sharing some really practical tools of how we can just overcome everyday stresses and anxiety. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, Ingrid.
You're so welcome, Trish. Thanks for having me.
To our viewing and listening audience, I'd like to thank you for joining us in this edition of Business Mentorship, Keeping It Real, where we introduced you to the person behind the logo. And I'm sure, like me, you will use some of the wonderful tips that Ingrid has shared with us today in your everyday life. So thank you so much for joining us. And if you have a story to share, please visit shareyourstories.online. Thank you.